Marie here, and today we are going to use a 6x6 paper pad to create a whole lot of cards. I'm calling these inside out cards. There's probably a cooler, older technique with the same name, but it's just what came to me because we're going to be using both the inside and the outside of the cards and swapping them, kind of like we're turning them inside out. Before we get started, let me show you the formula or sketch that we're going to be using today. You're going to apply this to every piece of paper except for the sentiment pieces in your paper pad. There's also a link in the description box below so you can view the sketch separately, or you can screenshot it right now. All right, we're going to apply that sketch to every piece of paper in the paper pad except for the sentiment pieces if your paper pad includes it. So for example, I had 4 sheets of mini tags and mini cut-aparts, and I just set those aside. And all the rest of the papers I cut at these dimensions. First, I cut off the 1/2 inch from the bottom. That's important that you're cutting it from the bottom because of the orientation of the pattern sometimes. Just because we're making traditional kind of vertical A2 cards, if you want to make something different, of course, you cut it however you like. But if you're following this specific method, this is what I did. I cut 1/2 inch at the bottom, and then I turned it back upright, and I cut it at 4.25 inches. So this will leave you with 3 pieces: a card front at 4.25 by 5.5 inches, a scrap at 1.75 by 5.5 inches, and a 1/2 inch by 6 inch strip. Set all those aside and focus on the card front pile. We're going to choose a basic die shape. Maybe it's a square or a rectangle or a circle. This is going to be the central focal spot for your card front. And in my case, I used an oval. At this point, if you're a very precise card maker, you're going to want to make a template. So grab a piece of scrap cardstock and run your die through after you measure precisely and get the placement perfect, and then use that template for placing your die for the remainder. I'm not a precise person. I'm an eyeballer. So I just used washi and guesstimation to position my oval die in the rough center of my card front pieces. I also ran these through my manual machine in pairs because that saved time and energy, and I still had that kind of nice finished edge that I really like from manual dies. Now at this point, when I first started cutting, I kept them in pairs that would also go together because it helped me organize. I would recommend pairing a bold pattern with a more neutral pattern. However, this particular paper pad, I didn't really get that luxury. There was just a lot of big, bright, bold patterns. And so at some point, I just kind of embraced it and I went a little unhinged with my combos. So you choose your own adventure and decide how you want to do that. But the actual strict method is you pair it, you swap the inside and the outside of 2. When you do that strict inside out method, then you're going to get 1 card front with 2 patterns for every piece of paper that you cut up. So I cut up 32 pieces of paper and I could have had 32 cards strictly from swapping inside out. And then an additional 10 utilizing the scraps that I'm going to show later. However, I got a little restless and I started taking a shortcut. So here's a variation on that technique if die cutting 32 card fronts sounds like a lot to you. Because remember, you're also going to want to dress these up with possible other dies. So it may be a lot of die cutting in your future, and maybe you don't want that much die cutting. I would cut up, if you're going to do that, cut up roughly half of the card fronts with the basic shape die. Again, you can pair them to save yourself a little time and effort. Pair the outside frame now with a different solid uncut card front, and pair the inside oval with a different other solid card front. And now you're getting 2 cards out of 3 card fronts. So it's not maximizing paper usage, but it is prioritizing kind of time and energy. So you choose what works for you. All right, so after we get all of these ovals cut and we kind of pair them up the way we want, it's time to add the little 1/2 inch strips. So we're going to use these as kind of a belly band across the middle. And I'm just going to pair them up however it looks good to me. And this is going to give me 3 patterns on one card front. I mention that because I've found a lot of 6x6 paper pad tutorials where there's kind of just one pattern on the front of a card. And that certainly has its place. It has its function, but I kind of like that play of additional patterns. And so I think it's fun when we can kind of mix and match a little. It's like more fun visually for me. Sometimes there were belly bands, like I kind of got down to the dregs and I didn't feel like any of the combos were working for me anymore. So in that case, a couple times I used the larger 1.7 by 1.75 scraps. When I did that, I put it over the frame but under the oval because it is a larger piece and I didn't want it competing. Another option is to use the little pieces of paper across the top. My daughter really likes to take those off, so that was her job. She took off all the tops for me, and this particular paper pad had a hole punched right in the middle, so it wasn't as usable, but all you have to do is cut those and layer them so that that join is hidden by some other element on your card, and so you can get additional belly band options that way. All right, so now we're just left with our other pile of scraps. These will fit roughly 3 to a card front. It's not perfect because it gives you an extra inch across the typical width of a card front. So what I did was I took one strip and I adhered it all the way to the left. I took another strip and I adhered it all the way to the right. And then I laid the third strip down the middle. So it gave a little more real estate to that middle strip. And sometimes I was able to use 2 scraps that were the same pattern, and it gave the impression of gluing that strip on a solid card front. After all the card fronts are assembled, it's time to start dressing them up. For many of these, I added a focal die cut from metallic cardstock, but again, I got bored with die cutting eventually. And I also stacked a lot of the little mini tags and cut aparts and then dress those up with a die or a punch. I eventually just was using all punches by the end of it because it was so much quicker. You also can decide how much you want to focus on only using the paper pad or if you want to bring in your stash to supplement. When all was said and done, I brought in some scraps and some 3x4 cards from my stash, and I was able to get 39 card fronts from a 36-piece paper pad. I could have used only the paper pad and created 42 cards. So it's totally up to you. Use your stash, choose the process that you enjoy. All right, so here's the final shot of almost all the cards I made because one was hiding and I missed it when I laid out all of these and I'd already made the thumbnail and everything. So I didn't want to retake the picture. It was kind of a production. So all total, I created 39 cards. I think they turned out really cute. I love that they're flat. It makes them really easy to mail, but they're definitely visually interesting. Like I said, some of these are a bit busy for the eye, and that's an understatement for some of these. But I embraced it. I really went with it. Your mileage may vary. You may want to choose maybe a calmer paper pad or one that has a better mix of solids and B-sides and that kind of thing. Also, I was kind of limited because mine was a single-sided paper pad. And of course, if you've got a double-sided paper pad, then whoa, Nellie, you're going to have so many options. And that's going to give you a lot probably of good B-sides too. All right. So anyway, that's it for today's project, Inside Out Cards. We used up a whole 6x6 paper pad. I hope this gave you some ideas for how you could use this formula. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.